It's always a treat when we get to take Lissa away from the children. For those who don't know, Lissa runs our youth and family program, so she is usually off with them on Sunday mornings rather than here with us. So, perfect song for this topic, yes? So this has been a 3-week series on sacred boundaries, right? About that being a path for our own mental wellness. And we're in week 3. So first week was what's mine to carry. Second week was the grace of saying no. And this week we're taking a look at compassion without collapse. I love the laughter of recognition, yes? So it is also Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, so I've been linking in this idea of sacred boundaries with the impact that they can have and standing in them and all of that, particularly how that impacts minority groups, which will be part of my talk. So here we are, compassion without collapse. Anybody in here struggle with that? Right? This idea of how do we stand compassionately? So just to review a little bit, last week we talked about the grace of saying no being a simple but not necessarily easy process that has 3 steps. So we state the issue with love. I love you and I want to stay open, and this topic doesn't support my feeling connected with you. It's about me. It's about my desire, and we talk about this. Boundaries are about creating more connection with people, not less. It's about how do I create a more authentic, connected way of really being present with someone. So notice how it doesn't say in there that to state the issue with love, I love you and you are just such a mess and I can't stand talking to you. Because you make me feel like blah, blah, blah. And what you always do is blah, 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 right? That's not what we're talking about when we say state the issue. Can you feel the difference in that? And then we set the limit, which is if this comes up again, I'll end the conversation and we can speak at another time. Not if you do this again, I'm leaving you, right? Or if you do this again, I'm going to hang up on you, right? It's not about a reactiveness. It's not about making the other person wrong. It's about being very clear about your own needs and what it is you need to do or to be, but it's all coming from a place of love, not punishment. And then the last piece, which is probably the hardest piece, is to hold the boundary. And parents in here, y'all know this is true. If one time you break the boundary, then kids are always like, well, you did it before, Mom, so can't we, we're all trying to test boundaries, right? So it's consistency is what makes the boundary real. So we talked a lot last week, and I got a lot of really great positive feedback about this talk because oftentimes people use their boundaries as actually a way to manipulate others. That we use our understanding of this is my boundary as a way to manipulate and make the other person feel a certain way, do a certain thing, change who they are. That is not what healthy boundaries are about. Healthy boundaries have almost nothing to do with the other person. Really take that in. Healthy boundary has to do with you. And healthy boundaries are pretty consistent. It's not that with this one person I have to set a boundary. It's that this is my boundary, period, end of story. Can you feel the difference in that? Because oftentimes we make this personal. And boundaries are not personal, right? It's not a personal attack on one individual if you feel as if you need to be clear about stating what a boundary might be. They're actually loving. They're actually about what you are willing to do or what you are willing to be. And that's a big flip. So I call it mind your own consciousness. Because we often use this idea of boundaries as a way to somebody has to set them straight. Somebody needs to tell them what they're doing to me or to others. Mind your own consciousness. Just pay attention to what's going on within you. Isn't that enough? I mean, that's enough for me to just sort of mind my own consciousness, let alone trying to mind everybody else's consciousness. And it's very unity because what we know and what we believe is that everyone's whole. Everyone's whole. I don't have to rescue somebody. I don't have to, if someone's in pain, I don't have to become their pain with them. I don't have to take over problem solving for them. It's a big one, right? I don't need to be the fixer. What I need to be is compassion. I need to see the truth of who they are. So part of this is like over-functioning. And over-functioning means that we take responsibility for everything. Anybody in here an over-functioner? Everybody in here should raise their hands. You're almost all over-functioners, right? I mean, it's a natural tendency that we're going to take responsibility for everything, even if it has nothing to do with us. How often do you do that? Somebody does something and you say, oh, I'm so sorry they did that. How is that possibly your responsibility? That somebody did something else, that you're apologizing for them. Can you feel how there's this codependency? Like there's, where do they end, where do I begin happening? So when we, so I shared a story from the New York Times, a column from the New York Times where the therapist helps people with situations, and it was the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law, and the mother-in-law is always bad-mouthing the other. It's the mother and the daughter, and the mother is always bad-mouthing the sister-in-law and trying to set a boundary. And the daughter is not very successful at it. And the therapist, that column is like, they don't pull any punches, right? So what she says in there, because at one point the daughter says, well, I told her that I didn't want to have these conversations anymore. And her response was, I need somebody to vent to. And then then she continues to have the conversations with her. So the therapist says, you have become a vessel for her emotional overflow. You are enabling behavior. So when we believe that compassion is about absorbing somebody else's pain, we're no longer in balance, and we are absolutely out of our spiritual integrity. Can you feel the truth of that? We all have everything we need, right? Can you feel what we're being invited to anchor? Right? But this is work. Can you feel how that was work? This is good work. Thank you. Somebody said good work, right? This is the good work. This isn't the panic. This isn't the giving in to the fear. This isn't giving in to reactivity. This is about knowing and understanding, oh, do I have the skill set to be of use in this moment? I have other skills that I can bring to this moment, right? And it's the same thing in all of our relationships. Whatever kind of suffering, whatever kind of pain that somebody is in, we're being invited to do exactly what we all stepped into right now. You could feel it, yeah? People reaching deep into the truth of who we were and the truth of who Barbara is. What if we did that in all of our relationships? I mean, really, take that in for a second. What if we did that in all of our relationships? We knew that there were those who could perhaps be in service greater than we could be. We knew that no matter what, we could anchor wholeness. That was something we could do. There is no greater gift than being seen as whole. Especially Barbara being in that kind of vulnerable situation. How many people in here have felt that vulnerable before? Right? And in that vulnerability, to have somebody know the truth of who you are and not fall into a story, not give in to the fear. Could everybody feel the fear trying to kick in? And that's why we come together in community too. It's easier to do this in community because we can anchor for each other in community, right? So we did this, right? We were open and empathetic. We connected with discernment. Who has the skills? Who should be near her? Who should be making a phone call? Who should be meeting the fire truck? Who's opening up doors, right? All of these pieces are being met from a place of discernment, not from a place of panic. And then in and through it all, we anchor truth. And I love this, like, I see your pain and I trust your power. And if that is not, that should be your mantra. Everybody say that. I see your pain and I trust your power. What if that's how we moved through all of our relationships? And I found this quote from Eric Butterworth, which I thought was really great, that there is always an all-sufficiency, even within the insufficiency. There is always more than what we can see. There is always more than what we can absolutely see. And we're being invited to not get rigid too, right? We're invited to not get super, super rigid about what it is that we're holding. We have to be flexible. We have to be willing to shift and move. Barbara starts to feel a little better. What starts to happen? Discernment, again. What is mine to do? What is mine to do here? So often with boundaries, we have this spectrum, and it's a little bit like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Too much of one thing, too little of another thing. What you're trying to settle into is what is authentic and feels just right. So we can be enmeshed, where we have no real boundaries. We can be codependent, where we have weak boundaries, so we're always putting other people first. Or the other place we can go sometimes is disengagement, where we put our walls up. And oftentimes we're doing that just because it's painful. We don't want to get hurt, right? So we may feel obligated to meet other people's needs. We may feel like we need to fix people. And we may feel like, I don't want to talk to anybody about anything. So somewhere in here, between the enmeshment, codependency, and the disengagement, there is that sweet spot where we are anchored in compassion without collapse. But you could feel in this room how all the compassion was there, and that part of us that wanted to collapse in, right? We're not recognizing our own power either in that moment. We're not recognizing our power, we're not recognizing her power, we're not recognizing the power of the people who do have skills that are showing up for her. So somewhere in this, it's not about being like, well, if somebody ever says this to me, I will never talk to them again. Which we do, right? Like, oh, they did that, so you hear it from the kids too, right? Like, oh, they're X'd out. Right? I've written them off, right? They're not in my world anymore. But that isn't truth. That isn't truth. We have to find a way to hold it all. So the practice is that spiritual discernment is needed when others are in pain. So we have to pause, which we felt everybody pause in the room when that happened, yes? There was a collective intake of breath. We want to notice our own reactivity. What's coming up for me? Oh, this is like what happened to my mother. Oh, I'm so afraid that might happen to my husband. Oh, like what's the reactivity? What's getting stirred up within you, right? What insufficiency are you believing in that moment? And then we get to anchor truth, and we get to ask, what is mine to release? Can I release the fear? Can I release my concern? Concern does not make you a compassionate person. Concern makes you an anxious person. Concern does not make you a compassionate person. It makes you anxious. And then the question we ask is, what is mine to do? Right? What is mine to do in this moment? And and this isn't necessarily just true for minority groups, but it's particularly true for minority groups, that there can be compassion fatigue. And based on collective trauma, that compassion fatigue can be really hard to navigate. That you're constantly carrying so much stress. You're constantly carrying so much as you're trying to navigate this world that doesn't want to see your wholeness. It doesn't want to see the truth of who you are. And you're told you have to stay strong and kind and don't be angry. And I don't know. I mean, I talked about that last week, the trope of the angry black woman. Sometimes it's just because she's been real clear about her boundaries. And that pisses people off, right? Like, no. And so understanding that it can really be exhausting to try to be calm and strong and kind and all of that when you're carrying so much. We have a living model of someone who I'm always inspired by, which is Cindy Acker. I'm always amazed at how she is able to just hold kindness, hold compassion, hold space in the face of all the systemic harm that is part of her lived experience and her generational experience. And not all of us can do that as well, right? So our job then is to just hold space for that reality. Like, acknowledge it, don't pretend it doesn't exist. One of the hardest things someone of color can hear is, I don't see race. And I know you mean that in the best of possible ways, but what that gets translated to in the lived experience is, you don't see my oppression. That's what it gets translated into, right? So don't try to explain it away. The big one is, don't center on your own discomfort. I mean, there's a whole thing out there about white woman tears, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, go Google it. But it's this idea that somehow, even in the discussion about trying to awaken to the discomfort that minority groups experience, white women make it about their discomfort and their guilt and their stuff, as opposed to staying centered on the people who actually live it. And so you have to let compassion become action. And we're doing that here, right? That's what we're stepping into, becoming action with our social justice choir and holding space. And the big one is, we just got to stay humble, right? We have to stay humble. So this affirmation for this section is, I commit to spiritual growth that includes justice, humility, and self-responsibility. Can we know this together, please?
I commit to spiritual growth that includes justice, humility, and self-responsibility.
Yeah. So we're going to step into meditation. The reflections for the week. So when have you confused compassion with rescuing or overextending yourself? How do you know when your compassion is coming from spiritual strength versus fear, guilt, or obligation? How does that feel in your body? How do you identify the difference? What does love with boundaries? What does that look like in your relationships? And where are you disengaged to protect yourself? Where have you actually sort of stepped out? And in what area of your life are you invited to practice compassion without collapse this week? And again, don't pick the tissue issues. Don't pick the biggest thing in your life right now. Pick something small, something manageable, so you can just explore and your own reactivity isn't super high, so that you can kind of listen to what it feels like and what your resistance is to you standing in that compassionate place without collapsing. So we're going to go into meditation, and we're going to hold Barbara, yes? That's what we're going to do, Barbara and Larry. So I'm going to invite us into this space, and I want you to think about what it means for you to anchor this space from spiritual integrity from wholeness, from an awareness of Barbara's sufficiency, from an awareness of Larry's sufficiency, from an awareness of all the doctors and nurses and the medical staff, from their sufficiency. And how can you stand in that compassionate place without collapsing into your own reaction? So we're just going to see Barbara, this beautiful being that she is. We're seeing her whole and vital. We're seeing her love and her compassion. We're seeing Larry with her. We're seeing that connection that they have. And I just invite you to allow that heart that was in that graph that I showed you of the continuum. We're going to be balanced right there, compassion without collapsing. And I just want you to place that heart all around Barbara and Larry. See it as a radiating heart of love and well-being. Seeing the wholeness that they are. Seeing every cell, every atom, every form and function of Barbara's body temple just aligning with the truth of who she is. Releasing what does not serve. Blooming forth with health and vitality, which is her true nature and her true name. And as you hold that for her, I want you to just notice if there's anything alive within yourself that wants to collapse in. And the invitation as we rest in the silence is to just sit with that part and hold it in that heart of love and wholeness and well-being and joy, yes? So just hold yourself in that same space as we rest for a few moments in the silence. How good it is to let go of the concern, to let go of the reactions, to just anchor the wholeness, the sufficiency that is each of us, that is Barbara, that is Larry, that is life itself, the sufficiency of life. And just feel that just continue to grow within yourself. Connecting up with each person here, connecting up with Barbara and Larry so that they are buoyed, they are lifted by the truth of their own divine nature. This is who we are, compassionate, without collapsing into our human experience. We hold and acknowledge the love that always is. Blessing Barbara, knowing that where she is, God is right now. And so it is. Amen. Ashe.